Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another test-driven JavaScript video. I'm recording this on October 29th, 2012, and picking up right where we left off in the last episode. And at the end of the last episode, what the chapter we're working on here right now is we are trying to get testing of our client-side DOM working. And at the end of the last episode, that wasn't working. We actually were getting a failure in our tests. But so just to remind you, what we're doing here is we've got our client-side code setting up our DOM, and then we're going to call our production code and have it do something, and then we're going to verify it in our client test code. So we create the div that's assumed to be in our home page, we run the production code, and then we verify that it was initialized correctly. Now, at the end of the last episode, I had some code that wasn't working. What we were seeing was that the code was failing on IE8. And I said I would investigate that offline, which I did do. And of course, it is just another IE8 weirdness. I looked into a little bit further. I added this attribute, blah equals blue in our test div. And then when I asserted that attribute existed and had the appropriate element on it, our tests worked just fine. And if I change that to, have something else, our tests fail appropriately, even on IE8, expected blue, blah, blah, blah. So there's nothing wrong with our tests. Our tests are working great. The problem is that IE8, when you take out a div in IE8, it thinks that is falsy. That is to say, it's basically saying it doesn't exist even though it does. So, IE, that, oh man, this is why we do this, because IE sucks. All right, so everything is working just fine. So now what we need to do is we need to get Raphael into our code, and we need to do that in a test-driven way. We're creating a div, we're initializing it, we're asserting that it's been set up correctly, sort of. And now what we need to do is we need to ensure that that has been done. So I guess we'll need to install Raphael, and then we will need to somehow assert that it's been used to initialize our DOM, our div. And also at some point we're going to need to do a smoke test to ensure that our magic div is in our actual homepage. And I'll explain that later. That'll probably be in a later chapter, actually. Okay. So just to remind you what's going on here, we're going to be adding a div here that we will use Raphael, which is an SVG framework for client-side JavaScript. We're going to use Raphael to actually create a drawing area here. SVG, of course, is a vector drawing approach in HTML. Okay, so I'm going to go install Raphael and back in a moment. Okay, I'm back. I've downloaded and copied Raphael.js into our vendor client. I'm actually going to rename this to reflect the version of Raphael that we're using, because I find it handy to have that really clear and obvious. So this is 2.1.0. And we need to get that into our client-side code, which we can do by updating our testacular configuration. Another option would be for us to just include everything in here with a star. And I might do that later on, but right now I'm rather liking doing it this way. So, and we'll need to restart JS test driver. Oops. Okay, there it goes. And now we run Jake. Okay, everything's looking good. Now what we need to do is we need to initialize Raphael and verify that it was initialized correctly. The problem with verifying that it was initialized correctly is I don't know what Raphael looks like when it's initialized correctly. So let's just go ahead and set this up with WeWikiPaint drawing area and WeWikiPaint drawing area. give it the correct name again, make sure that works. It does. And let's actually pass that magic string through to our production code. I think what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and initialize Raphael here and just, yeah, and see what it looks like. So let's see what Raphael takes to actually initialize. Okay, container. So it can take either a DOM element or an ID. I think I would rather pass in an ID because I think that's how we'll use it in our actual production code. Yeah, we can just pass in an ID. So let's go ahead and do that. We will say, they call it papers, so let's just do that. Raphael drawing area ID. And what happens when we run that? Okay, well, it doesn't like the fact that Raphael is capitalized. So let's go ahead and fix that. And then it's going to complain that Raphael is not defined, so we'll add that to our globals. And it's complaining about some formatting, so I'll just reformat the whole thing. Okay, so there we go. Let's go ahead and check this in. All right. So now what I want to do is I actually want to go into Chrome and run the debugger and see what happens to our DOM. Okay, so let's run our tests again. Oops, I always do that. There's our client code. And in fact, let's actually run the let's look at the test code instead. So we'll set a breakpoint right after we initialize our drawing area. There we go. And now let's look at the actual DOM. See what's going on in here. There's our drawing area. Okay. So that has an SVG tag in it. That's how we can know that Raphael's been initialized. Now, I suspect that IE is going to do something different. One of the nice things about Raphael is that it will do vector graphics in a cross-platform way. And older versions of IE didn't support SVG. They supported this Microsoft proprietary thing called VML or something like that. And so we're going to need to work around that. But let's see if we can do this. So we're going to want to make sure that this div contains an SVG element. And one way for me to do that would be for me to use all the DOM methods, but I've actually got jQuery installed. jQuery is this awesome cross-platform framework or library for dealing with a DOM. So let's just go ahead and look at that. What we're going to want to do is get the children. So we're going to say, we're going to turn the div into a jQuery object. We'll ask for the children. Get the first child. Now I'm sure there's a better way to do this. It's been a little while since I've worked with jQuery and the details have escaped me. Now we've got that first child. Now what we're going to want to do is look at it. Let's see if we can get the tag. I'm going to go ahead and pause and look into this and be back in a moment. Okay, I'm back. It doesn't look like jQuery itself has an easy way of getting the tag name, but what we can do is simply pull out the actual DOM element and then ask it for its tag name, like this. And we can dump that. So if we do that and we run Jake, it's telling us that jQuery is not defined. We can just add that here. And now we can see it dumping out that we're getting SVG for everything except for IE8. What we're going to do then is we're going to say expect. Actually, let's do this. We'll pull out the the tag name, and then we'll expect the tag name to equal SVG, and that should work everywhere except for IE8. Yeah. Okay, so we're getting closer here. Next, what we need to do is figure out exactly what's going on in IE8. And we saw earlier that we see here, we said expected div to equal SVG. Div, I don't know if div is good enough. I kind of want to know exactly, we really want to confirm that it's really Raphael. The other thing that we've got going on here is we've somehow got to have it behave differently in our test according to whether or not it's IE8 or the other browsers. I think that's what we'll do next time is we've got Raphael installed. We're asserting that it's been used to initialize our div. Now we need to make test check different things for IE8 and everyone else. And we need to figure out exactly what Raphael is doing on IE8. That's what we'll pick up with next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you then.